over the past certainly 10, 15 years or so, what we've seen is an acceleration for two reasons. One, because it's needed for a very good reason. We're losing other forms of data. So MMM is becoming one of those that we could rely on more. But secondly, because we've got like much more processing power than we used to have, things can be much quicker. And so what used to be a very long process of wrangling data into something manageable can now be done much, much better because of the advances in machine learning and that kind of stuff. And so we've got like a much better process that could be done more quickly. That gives more advertisers access to it. More advertisers have access to it means that knowledge about this has grown. It's grown very, very well. And we've got a lot of different companies bringing in different techniques for how to use it. You can use it instead of just once across a year. You could use it far more frequently. We're seeing a lot of companies use it like all the time, constantly, which is great.
Welcome, Tony. So great to have you on my podcast. So quite interesting how I met you and then went on to have that event where I met you a couple of times. So welcome to this show. Tony is a marketing science expert, enthusiast. I've seen him talk about marketing mix models with so much of passion. I said that this passion should not be limited to only me knowing about it. This should go out there through the podcast. So I reached out to Tony. Tony was graceful enough to come. So thank you, Tony, for coming on the show.
Well, what a wonderful welcome. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, like truly flattered to be invited on the show. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, great. So Tony, we did have a quite quick conversation on how your entire career, right? And quite a career, like from agency to Meta in the last this thing. So I'll just read out if you don't mind, because it's quite a mouthful and quite extraordinary in terms of, so you worked with Zenith Media, right? And actually the one that was inspired the series Mad Men, the ad movie, right? Yeah, and after which Omnicom was born. You spent time WVP. I think the learning ground was set in terms of from the client point of view and mindshare. You joined Facebook in 2010 and in what it was called the pricing and yield management.
That's right? Yes, that was my first job at Meta. So I think my career so far has been like helping advertisers understand value. So my time in agencies, I was buying press, first of all, planning and buying, and then moved into digital and helping advertisers literally value the things that they were buying. How do you compare digital to other forms of marketing that you may be used to doing? And that's relevant to marketing mix, which was a technique available at the time. Many other forms of attribution are used in digital as seeing how things are or should be valued. And so when I started, first of all, at Meta, the idea was to help Meta understand like how to value things. The path at Meta was very interesting. It was a team that was set up using measurement to value our own products. And so we didn't want to be in the position that a lot of other people who sell media were in. So I think if you look at most measurement, how it's used within marketing or people who sell marketing, sell ads, it's generally a reason to spend a bit more money. What we wanted to do at Meta instead was to understand the value of our platform. If we could understand the value of it and we could invest in our product to make it better and better, our whole idea was just like have a level playing field, get everyone's knowledge of what they're actually valuing, how to do it, to be level, to be the same. And then we could work on improving the quality of our products so it's as cheap as possible for people to advertise and reach the audience that matters to them. So that was the path. Pricing yield management was about like how do we establish the prices first of all. And then it went on to be the marketing science team that I was the first person. All of a sudden it spawned into a big team.
Great. And you expanded into about 11 different countries?
Across EMEA, yes. And so in marketing science in Meta, the team expanded to about 450 or so of us worldwide. In EMEA, it started just from me, and then I moved over to Dubai about 5 years or so ago. The team now in Meta, 11, 12 countries across EMEA, and about 100 or so practitioners in marketing science.
Great. So marketing science as a field, and one of the key proponents of that is the marketing modeling that you do. So let's start with the easy one for our audience. What is marketing mix modeling?
It's not a new technique, first of all. It's basically a regression technique, a mathematical technique of taking variables, separating them out and working out which of the variables actually had an impact on the thing that matters to a marketer, sales of product. So the simplest way we tend to explain it is like unbaking a cake. You can see there's a chocolate cake there. How do you find out how much flour, fat, sugar, etc. went into it? And so the process is using regression. It's a statistical process. Then looking at the confidence that you have of the answers that you get from the statistics to say, I can say with confidence that it was TV that drove this, it was digital that drove that, it was promotion that drove this, my underlying brand value is that. That's how it works.
So on that question, because then it requires a lot of investment, like they keep changing the variables accordingly, and it accordingly kind of gives the result. So do you need kind of a big system to do that? For like, if I'm a CMO with the question that I like, okay, now where do I like, is it too complicated? Is it too simple? Or how will a CM approach it from that point of view?
So I'll unpack that in a couple of different ways. If we look at the history of MMM, like this regression technique's been used for maybe 50 years or so. Previously, you'd only have probably the preserve of the largest companies who spend a lot on advertising, who could actually afford to do this, who could afford to invest in econometricians, these statisticians who do this, to separate that out. It's an expensive process. You've got to get all this data. The data collection takes a long time. So historically, you might get someone doing like 1 or 2 dips a year maximum. And the data collection alone could take a year to get all those bits of data. So let's say the data that we're looking at is not just media, but it's extra elements like what's competitive activity at the time? What was the weather doing during that time?
Right.
Like all of these things that could actually influence a sale, they're just as important as the media variables. Collecting that data takes a long time. And then the practice of actually looking and understanding the results can take time. Now, that's historically what we had within MMM. Great technique, very slow and expensive to do. Over the past, certainly 10, 15 years or so, what we've seen is an acceleration for 2 reasons. One, because it's needed for a very good reason. We're losing other forms of data. So MMM is becoming one of those that we could rely on more. But secondly, because we've got like much more processing power than we used to have, things can be much quicker. And so what used to be a very long process of wrangling data into something manageable can now be done much better because of the advances in machine learning and that kind of stuff. And so we've got like a much better process that could be done more quickly. That gives more advertisers access to it. More advertisers have access to it means that knowledge about this has grown. It's grown very, very well. And we've got a lot of different companies bringing in different techniques of how to use it. You can use it instead of just once across a year. You could use it far more frequently. We're seeing a lot of companies use it like all the time, constantly, which is great.
So what would be the steps of starting our market mix modeling? There are a couple of questions in this question. What are the steps? And as you said, what is the reliability of the data that you get, right? And that plays a huge role in kind of the output that you get. So what are the two? How does somebody get started, and what is the reliability of data?
I would say that one of the very first things the organization needs to do is to decide on what are the variables. Like the variables, you should have as many as possible because there's so many things that influence those variables, right? Like if you just turn around and say, all I want to do is to look at like TV, press, posters, digital during that time, and you forget the fact that there was a cut price promotion in store, you ignore the fact there was a cut price promotion in store, then obviously that's going to influence things. If you forget things that go on in the market that influence competitive activity, an event like COVID, like all of these things have an impact. So the first thing is like agreeing and aligning on what the variables are going to be. The second is understanding that it's a model, right? Like, and the best thing that we can think about models is that no model's perfect. It's a model. It's not causal.
Right.
And people will argue over how causality can be reached. My argument would always be that the only way you can get to true causality is through experimental design, by looking at actual advertising experiments that can have control and holdout groups, have those completely separate from your exposed group, and look at the results between them using the practices from medicine. If you use those and you have that, you can trust the results. A model doesn't have that in exactly the same way. And so it then comes down to the skill of the modeler. Modeling is part art and part science. It's not all science. And people can like twist models in a particular way using certain variables, making sure that this is as open as possible and can be controlled as much as possible. The things that modelers tend to look for is like, what is the accuracy of the results? And how do I explain any of the inaccuracies that are there? Or how do I deal with any of those variables that I don't have the same statistical confidence in? How do I put that back into the organization so the organization agrees that, yes, we can take this with confidence that we should actually make an action on the back of it? And this is maybe one thing that organizations don't do as much as they should. These models are expensive in terms of time investment or in terms of money to do.
Right.
Not using the results is kind of criminal, right? Like you should, if you're investing in this, make sure you're actually using the results properly. So understanding it's a model, aligning on the variables are super important. Having as many variables as possible, good people with good skills on statistics, not just someone who sold the idea of a model. You can trust those. And if you're going to make big decisions around your marketing budget, make sure you've got people who know what they're doing.
So a couple of questions on the variables part. So certain variables are planned for, certain variables are real time, and you're not planned for, right? So extreme example is COVID, right? It may not, you don't get a COVID, it's once in a lifetime kind of a thing. But that one, and second is the variable of offline, right? A lot of the data is available online. How does one plan for variables that is offline or something that's a real time that is not planned for, and make sure that the model still works?
Looking back at different periods and making sure you've got like a statistically similar period or event that you're comparing to. And then forward forecasting, if you've got a line that's projecting forward of saying, well, this is what we expect to happen within our business. What are the events that would impact that? And there are certain ways that organizations would look and control for that. If I forecast my model out now, what I anticipate to happen, and I look forward, and then I match my MMM model and my approach to modeling to that, has it actually happened, is something that people will look, align versus what was anticipated to happen. The second is using a technique, a causal technique like LIFT, and LIFT is one of the meta products that is experimental design, controlled, exposed, etc. Like looking at something that is actually causal, controlling for that, and then saying, using that to calibrate my model. Is the effect that I'm seeing in line with what we're seeing from LIFT? We know that LIFT is truth because LIFT is controlled and exposed. However you get to that, there's a meta version of that. Other people have versions of that as well. Can I look versus something which is core truth to see whether my model, my line of best fit really fits in line with that?
You did speak about meta, and one of the challenges I, as a marketing agency or any marketing CMO, is like attribution. I will not get into attribution, but just sticking on the topic of marketing mix modeling, and does all the tools like LIFT, right? It does not talk into the data of Google or Amazon, right? So as a CMO, I'm multi-channel. I'm not just stuck on Meta properties. I'm not only stuck on Google properties, goes across. So this walls that are surround each of those channels, does it have an effect on the kind of results that you get out of the modeling?
So the beauty of marketing mix model is it goes across everything, and so it's not channel specific. You're right. Like there are tools that are in place across a lot of these channels that will only tell you the truth within that. And the beauty of marketing mix modeling is you look across absolutely everything at the same time, so you can see all of your channels there. I tend to think, and the advice that I give to marketers is that you want someone impartial building the model. And so like an impartial view from an outsider shouldn't be Meta building a marketing mix modeling for you. Meta's approach to LIFT and how LIFT is done, it's well documented. It's open about what we actually do and how we do it, how we go about controlling for the kind of people who go into the controlled and exposed groups. Making sure you've got good visibility of the process is vital. Now, in marketing mix modeling, if you have that in-house or if you have an external agency, that really helps you to do that. I personally believe, and this is certainly something we advise CMOs like all the time, anyone who designs a model, knowing that a model can be designed in various different ways, it's art and science. Like if someone's got a vested interest in the outcomes, you've got to have a look at and take with a pinch of salt, like, are these results I can really trust? And that's why Meta made the decision not to build models for other people. What we've released instead is open source code. The open source code is available on GitHub for anyone to adapt for their own purposes. It's not our code. It's code that was written by people internally, but it's not our approach in modeling. It's for people to use and to adapt so that they can look and they can say, well, I'll take this bit of the code and make it work for me. Free and available to all to use. And that, I believe, is much better than going to a Meta or a Google or an Amazon or whomever and saying, like, here's a model that you should use, because anyone who's selling something, they're going to have the thumb on the scale somewhere, surely.
Right. And and you have their version of the truth, as we put it. That brings me to an interesting question. So your journey or like Meta's journey stops at the time when uploading on GitHub. They take that, then it up to the organizations to take the next step forward of taking that and making sure the marketing mix modeling is working in their organization. So now the next question, it requires a human on the other side in an organization, right? To be able to use that and be smart enough to use that. So now you have recruit a person who are typically good in that. The CMO is out there. He may or may not be the best person to give the clear input. He has some business realities to look after. How does somebody get a person who's good at marketing mix modeling? How does it fit into the organization? What should the organization be doing to fit into this person? From an organization perspective, what are the pits and pitfalls or challenges that a CMO faces?
We see a couple of different approaches. I think there are companies that decide it's worth investing in a team of people, and generally that's a team of people rather than an individual that will do it. the challenges are organizational of how it fits into the rest of the organization and making sure the quality of what is done in-house is as good as it needs to be so that you can make robust decisions on the back of it. Another approach, of course, is to use specialists who do this. And so there are specialists in agencies who would build models. There are specialist modeling agencies just for MMM. And there's a new kind of rise of a lot of companies and individuals popping up and doing this kind of stuff. The big question comes around the quality and making sure that you've got quality that you can trust. Over the past couple of years, we've seen, and everyone's talking about AI, and so you see people saying, "I've got an AI model," and like, "I should have an AI model." And like, what is the value of that? Like, can it actually be trusted? I think that is a big open question at the moment about should AI be trusted to build these models. And it sounds great, and particularly someone who wants an AI strategy said, like, give me one of those AI, means nothing without the actual quality of the person underneath it. So I believe that whether the person is internal or whether it's an agency, going to a specialist, looking at what the specialist does, the CMO's got to adapt here, right? The CMO's got to adapt enough to understand what's going on. If you're just going to believe the person who comes along with a fancy suit and a nice haircut and says, like, trust me, this is going to be okay, how do you actually calibrate and know that this is the best model that you can buy? These things aren't cheap. And they're incredibly valuable. You can save yourself a lot of money from wasting in marketing by following these, making sure that there's a robust approach. So there's a number of companies out there. I would advise any CMO who's in this space to look at different modeling approaches, spend a bit of time understanding it, working out, like, what are these people talking about? If I'm just being told it's AI, trust me, it's fine. It probably isn't, right? You've got to scratch deeper than that. Look for expertise. Look for other companies who are using and making good decisions on the back of it. May I just one more thing, because I think this is important, and this is how the organization listens to the results.
Right.
And this is another thing about the sharing of the results and getting it through the organization. There's little point investing the money and time in doing this if you're not going to use the results. And so having the confidence by aligning up front, organizationally on, like, what are we going to do? What do we all agree is the right KPI that we're going to make a decision on? What decision is going to be made and who's going to make that decision? Is the form of data robust enough to do it? Is everyone agreed? Like, that's the thing that's got to be done up front by organizations.
Yeah, and I think there is a definite sell-in that is required from the resource that is doing it, because for the comprehension of the data and to make it tangible for the business, and the CMO for tangible in the, because it's very early days of a person in the organization. So for a CMO, as you said, look for other places. Is there places that they can go in, like resources that they can use to upgrade their knowledge about marketing mix modeling? Is there meta resources? Is there other resources that they can look at? Because this requires an upgrade for the CMO to be used, to know that if they are going on the right direction. Is there any resources that they can go to?
There's, I think, just even Googling on the web and having a look through, you know, like using a search engine on the web and having a look through and seeing, like, what are the various things that are available? Yes, there's a ton of education that Meta has on its platform and Google has on its platform about approaches to marketing mix modeling, how it could be done. There's a lot of education. You can find stuff on LinkedIn. You can find stuff just generally in the open web about various approaches. It takes a little while to understand it. I would say for the CMO, like, CMOs are busy, right? Like, and this is an extra thing to have to do. And so investing in people with statistics skills and statistical understanding to help them navigate this space is really valuable. And so these are people that we're seeing a lot more with data science skills, coming with engineering degrees. And in the Middle East, we're seeing more and more people coming out with good interest in this area, starting to build data science skills. Now, I think around those skills, we need to constantly enhance them, and we need to know how to develop them within an organization. That's not something that is always easy to do. A data scientist, I found from experience, like, they're motivated in a very different way to somebody who might work in sales. And so how do I think about their career and their career path? How do I think about their motivation? Is a different challenge for a CMO to know I've got a good statistician that's growing and I can rely on, and keeping up to date with the latest enhancements that go on in something like MMM.
So just pulling myself back and coming more to this region, which people listen, a lot of people from this region listen to. How developed or how mature is there a community of data scientists, digital enthusiasts, of people who enjoy marketing mix modeling? How developed is it in this part of the world?
So I found there are pockets of excellence, and that's not to say that everything else is dreadful. Like that is the same in every market. There are pockets of excellence. What I don't see as much here is much of a community of people kind of coming together that we tend to see in other markets that I've been involved in. I found that analysts and data scientists tend to gravitate towards each other quite well. There is a good kind of sharing of knowledge and information that tends to happen in the field of analytics, which is great to see. And it could happen more here. And we'd like to see it happen more here because people feed off each other and then everyone learns together and the whole tide rises at the same time. The pockets of excellence that I've seen are certainly around modeling agencies. We're seeing a lot of people come from either the colleges in India or with the Indian education system into the market here, absolutely excellent at what they do. So they've got great data understanding, great statistical knowledge. It's not being harnessed as well as it could within the organizations that we see. So we want to see that grow as much as we can.
Oh, okay, great. So, and that brings me to MeasureCamp. And I'm sure this... So I first saw MeasureCamp. I did not know such a organization exists in the rest of the world on your LinkedIn feed. And I thought that, okay, this is amazing. There is a place where all the like-minded people who are statisticians, who love the tech, who love psychology, all of those put together to come together in a one single place and talk the different market mix modeling, analysts. So tell me more. I mean, I'm so excited. I looked at all the things that I registered the first day itself. So tell me more about MeasureCamp.
Great that you're coming. Love it. So this is the first time it's being done here. MeasureCamp as an organization has been going for about 10 years or so.
Okay.
And we're bringing it to Dubai for the first time. It is what's referred to as an unconference. And so unlike a conference that you go to normally where there'd be a structure of speakers, etc., this is an open forum. So in the morning, people come along, and if they are chosen to present during the day, their idea will go ahead, the presentation will go ahead. If no one wants to see the presentation, if I say I want to present on MMM, no one wants to listen to me talking about MMM, presentation doesn't get to go ahead. So the beauty of this is that the unstructured nature tends to appeal to a lot of people who are in the world of analytics. It's a way of us kind of coming together and seeing that there's a lot of other people like me. So for argument's sake, I found in the past, myself included, a lot of analysts can be introverted, but all of a sudden you've got a community of people who are exactly the same. It's like there are other people like me who actually care about the MAPEs and the R squared and things like that. So it's interesting not to be embarrassed about that and to come into the same space. So we've got the organizer of MeasureCamp, Peter, who's coming along, the guy who invented it in the first place. He's coming along to be with us on the day as well. We're very lucky to have a number of sponsors to put this on. Like, this is not free. We've got to pay for the hosting of it. And the sponsors generously kind of give their money to doing this, and so that they can build this community. And when one person rises, we'll all rise at the same time. So we've got Heriot-Watt University, the university that I studied in Dubai. They're providing the venue, a great sponsor for us. We've got Analytics Edge, who are an MMM specialist, who've also agreed to sponsor. Chain Reaction, who's sponsoring as well. We've got Reprise and Publicis from the agency front who are sponsoring. And they're just sponsors that we have announced so far. The rest of the sponsors you can find on our website, and you can look more people who sponsor in the journey as we go forward.
So, does it make sense for a CMO to attend a MeasureCamp? And if at all, what should he or she expect at the event?
It's open to absolutely anyone. I think what I've noticed in the past and heard from other MeasureCamps is that everyone's invited. CMOs can get a lot from it. A lot of the conversation, we want people to be involved in the conversation. So CMOs who are prepared to present, who are prepared to talk, who are prepared to have conversations is what we want, because that's how the day works. Rather than sitting back and being presented to, which is what most conferences are, getting involved is important. Unlike a lot of other conferences, the unconference nature means it's not a sales conference, right? Like, I'm sure some business gets discussed, but really it's about the process. And so if there are people using particular statistical techniques, they might be the things that are talked about, like, and people want to talk about. GA4, for argument's sake, is one of the things that's hot on people's lips. I'd be amazed if there weren't presentations around that and how people are managing that. Now, a CMO might be thinking, well, how do I actually look at how much time is going into GA4 from my team? Like, is it working for me? Is it not? How do I look at the value of that? And might get involved in that. We would love CMOs to be there, absolutely, to listen, to involve themselves in the conversation, to present about the challenges. So, for instance, like for a CMO to say, how much money and time do I invest in MMM? How do I know I've got the right person? Presentation on this and how I overcame that barrier would be a great thing to talk about.
Just so that the CMOs are not scared of, is it required that he has a degree in statistics and understands regression analysis in complete detail for him to attend the event?
No, not at all. So for argument's sake, like, one of the things that I may do at the conference is actually talk about like an anonymous session, an analyst anonymous, where it's for analysts, but we're able to turn around and say, look, here's my struggles with data, right? Like, I produced this great thing. The data said that we should do this. And all of a sudden the CMO says, no, I'm not interested at all. And for the CMO to be said, yeah, the reason is because I don't have enough confidence to be able to, in the results, to be able to say that. No need for a statistical degree, of course. Like there are many people who are not statisticians who'll be there. The blend of data scientists, marketeers, modelers, analysts from different fields, not just marketing analytics, but from different fields, financial modeling and that kind of stuff. Like all of that is the basis for this. It tends to be from our own networks that there are more people from the marketing field who come together, but people who come from all different parts of analytics to come together and just talk about how modeling, data analysis, etc. is done.
So you said there's an art and science to this entire process, right? Will it be predominantly science, or will there be kind of a softer thing of like of real case studies where people use a certain amount of art skills or stuff like that to bring together results through this? Or will it be a very academic session, or will there be real life case studies of how it worked?
The beauty of this is I don't know.
Okay, unconfirmed, sorry.
I don't know what's going to happen until the day.
Sure.
I suspect that there will be there'll be less people kind of saying, because quite often at conferences, like, look at my great results. Here's a great chart showing like we're so much better than everyone else. Like that's not going to happen. I don't think in that way. Here's how I applied a technique to this situation. Like here's how I learned this over the past couple of years. That's the kind of stuff that we see in MeasureCamp. So for argument's sake, from Meta's point of view, like this is how the code was written for Project Robin, which is the open source code on GitHub for MMM. This is the process that we went through. This is how we tested it. That's the kind of stuff. It's the back end stuff rather than saying like, look at our model, isn't it great?
So coming towards the close of this, so the event is on 9th?
The 9th of September, yes.
Okay. Can people still register?
Yes, they can, yeah. Dubai.measurecamp.org. If you go there, you can see all of the details about where it is, what's likely to happen during the day. Have a look at our sponsors. And please, like I said, sponsors are the reason this is going ahead. Please have a look at our sponsors, connect through to our sponsors pages and see what those companies do. That's very important to us.
So till when can they register? Is it till the previous?
Until the tickets run out.
Okay.
I think we had the first release. We released tickets in batches. First release went within 24 hours.
Right.
The second release went very quickly. There's another release coming up soon. If people haven't managed to get tickets, by all means, ping me, connect with me on LinkedIn. If there is space on the day, as long as it's not the day before, if there's space on the day, then by all means, the more the merrier. We've got space to host Harriet Watt. As long as we give them a reasonable amount of notice about the numbers, we'll be absolutely fine. But please register. The more the merrier. This is a community for everyone. It's not for us. And so we want as many people there as possible, building the community.
So Honor, thank you for starting off this community here. And I think it's the need of the hour. And all the enthusiasts can come at one place and have a conversation around that. I don't think there was any place that existed today for people, for data scientists and marketing science people to come together. So thank you for bringing the MeasureCamp to here. So on that, thank you for coming on the podcast, Tony. It's been amazing. And one of the things that we discussed before, like we will not get too technical, and unfortunately we did not go there because we want more and more people to start off on the marketing science journey, because I've seen it personally up close, how it makes a huge difference to organizations.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.